quatrains about future events until after the event occurs. For instance, the Great London Fire of 1666, well, nobody knew that that quatrain that he wrote predicting the Great London Fire of 1666 was actually about the Great London Fire or anything about it until after the Great London Fire occurred.
Mm-hmm.
The same with Napoleon III. No one understood at all what his quatrains were talking about until after the reign of Napoleon III. So even Nostradamus knows that he doesn't want you to he doesn't want to affect the future. He wants you to see that it is within the realm of human ability to predict the future and to see the future, but not necessarily to affect the future. So he's very careful in how he words his quatrains so that you don't know what's going on until only after it happens. And so the message that I get from that is not, oh my God, I can predict the future and I'll know, what lottery number is going to be, next week and I can win $1 billion. No. That's not what his message is. His message is that we can see the future, that we all have that shamanic intent, and that we can go forward and with that in mind, and that this gives us greater awareness, greater consciousness, and allows us, when that moment happens, to make better decisions. And do I think that there's an evil New World Order that's trying to create a militaristic, technological, crypto nightmare? You bet I do. Anyone who doesn't think that's happening is blind and ignorant. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you fall under that spell, then you will become part of it.
That's a very good way to put it. And also, I mean, there is this, reservation here, so to speak, for the kind of the difficulty in sorting out, what you're describing there with the New World Order. Okay, so who does actually belong to that, to those kinds of people who have those kinds of philosophies, I guess. I mean, for instance, the top Masons that you mentioned, are these the so-called elite, the royalty? Duke of Kent, head of British Freemasonry, the Windsors, are these part of the top Masons that you describe?
That's a great question. No, actually. I think we can see that historically there was a break, and Fulcanelli implies this without going into great detail, but if you investigate the history of Freemasonry, you can see that there is a break in Freemasonry around 1800 or so, and it's a break where the British Freemasons gained predominance and began setting aside the antiquated Freemasonry that existed before it. And I'm really speaking more about the French Freemasons who were set aside. And so I think that and this is why Fulcanelli is anonymous. This is why he doesn't want anyone to know who he is, not because he's trying to hide from us, but because he's trying to hide from them. And so there was a war within Freemasonry at some point. Now, I don't know when this happened, but there was definitely a war within Freemasonry, and the Freemasons that we've had for the last 150 years or so have been riding on the laurels of all that occurred before. And they are the evil personification of the events that their sages and shamans predicted would happen in the future. And they mistakenly believe that it is up to them to construct this future that they have been told about previously, in 1500s and 1600s, when the real guys were working, like Nostradamus. And so, I think that the people that run the world right now are part of this pseudo-Freemasonic initiation, and there is another group which lies behind the scenes, which has nothing to do with that group. And
maybe they even don't call themselves Freemasons anymore.
No, they don't. In fact, they completely abandoned it, and so, I call the latter group the Illuminati, which I think is as good a name as any, although they are definitely not illumined. And the previous group I really don't have a name. I call them the Masters of Light. I call them the Alchemists of old. I don't know who they are. I know that, this other group, this we'll call them the good guys, for lack of a better way of describing them.
Sure.
The good guys don't act in our world. In other words, you can't see them, although you can see them, but you won't see them on TV. They don't generally write books. They don't make films. They don't pontificate. They act behind the scenes in odd and strange ways to influence events. The Hermeticists of ancient Europe, no one knew who they were. They would walk into a village and they could change the village they would be disguised as a beggar or an old man with a gnarly beard. And they would go into villages and they would change the feeling. They would change the way that things happened in a better way without ever taking credit, and no one would ever know that it was even them. This is really the role that, say, Gandalf has in Lord of the Rings. He is, if you read the books very carefully, you'll see that he's influencing and manipulating the situation. But it's a difference between Gandalf and Sauron. Sauron is manipulating the situation also, but he's manipulating the situation for the wrong reasons. Gandalf is still manipulating the situation. There could be no doubt about it. But he's manipulating the situation for the right reasons. And this is the difference between the pseudo-Freemasonic orders that exist today and the orders that existed before the dawn of modernity. And that's when you need to start looking at when things went awry. Around somewhere between 1750 and 1820 is really when we entered the industrial modern age, and that's when things really started going wrong. That's the time period that I examine more than any other historical time period, because I'm incredibly fascinated by the sudden lack of ability of Europeans to predict the future. It suddenly disappears. You can't see it anymore. We see the enslavement of children in factories. We see the forests of Europe being chopped down to feed the mammon of industrialization. We see the banks becoming extremely powerful, black magician bankers creating money out of nothing. And so I pinpoint this break, at least the exoteric break around that time period. And I'm pretty sure I'm close on the money there.
Very interesting. I hope we can return and talk a little bit more about that if you want to in the next segment. But we're fastly approaching the end of the time in this first segment. But I do want to spend the last couple of minutes talking a little bit more about Time Wave 2013, your new upcoming film here. You mentioned that you guys were in Peru, among other things, filming. Sounds absolutely incredible to be down there, of course, speaking to shamans and so forth. Was that the only place you were, or have you been kind of about and around for this film also?
Yeah, well, the reason that I went to Peru is, well, first off, because the Cross of Henday mentions Peru. And so I wanted to find out exactly why the Cross of Henday was pointing towards Peru. And what I've discovered was the reason that the unknown builder of the Cross of Henday was pointing the earnest student towards Peru was because the true spiritual alchemy, the true spiritual alchemical tradition is still alive in Peru. the Q'ero people escaped the conquistadors and went up into the high Andes, 18,000 feet, and lived there for 400 years, speak no Spanish, have nothing to do with the Spanish or the European culture that conquered Peru, and they have managed to hang on to their traditions. What's interesting about this is that they did a genetic background search of the Q'ero people of Peru, and the people that they're closestly related to are the Tibetans of the Himalayas.
Really?
And so, yes, and we know that Tibet has the alchemical tradition still intact also. So my feeling is that the Tibetans understood the secret of the transmutation of the body and of the human destiny, and I don't know if they came across the Bering Strait or whatever the theories are.
Yeah.
Somehow they made their way into the New World, and I think that they ended up finally in the Andes Mountains, which is the closest to Tibet that we have in the Western Hemisphere. Mm-hmm. And so that was the reason that I wanted to go there and find out what they really thought. And of course now I know that they have an entire tradition of igniting their light body, their luminous energy field, in the caves in the Andes, and they have an entire alchemical tradition still today that's intact, and anyone can go down there and learn it.
Wow, that's amazing. And you, how did you hook up with some of these people? Did you contact someone down there? How did this work?
Well, one of my good friends is Dr. Alberto Villoldo, who's been studying with the Incan shamans for 25 years. He's a medical anthropologist originally from Cuba, came to the United States after Castro, graduated from the University of San Francisco, and he abandoned the entire Western medical paradigm 25 years ago and went down to Peru to learn everything about what was going on, originally just the healing techniques down there, but through that he discovered the alchemical tradition, and then we met in, it must have been about year 2000, maybe 1999, right when we hit the height of the research into the Hende material, and we hit it off, very, very, very good friends, and so he was our guide through the caves and into the alchemical underworld of the Q'ero, and so because the Chinese have destroyed Tibet, because the pseudo-Freemasons have destroyed the true alchemical Freemasonic traditions in Europe, there's really almost no place left that is holding on to this thing, and I'm sure that we're going to lose it in Peru very soon because they're becoming contaminated by Western ideas. The glaciers are melting rapidly in the high Andes, forcing them down into the 12,000, 10,000 foot mountains. So they're coming down. They're starting to rub shoulders with the already westernized indigenous people. Mm-hmm. And so I can see that the ideas are going to become contaminated very quickly and lose their pristine quality. So I wanted to gather as much of these ideas as I could. And of course they have a prediction called Pachacuti, which is that there's going to be a new emerging human being that's going to come in around 2012. And they don't mean that it's a being that's going to be, not us. It's that we are changing our genetic structure and makeup, possibly through these alchemical light body practices. And this is the hopeful prophecy that we are advancing towards in this world right now.
Wow, that sounds absolutely fascinating. And all of this that you're talking about, I guess people could find out much more about if they get your new and upcoming film, Timeway 2013, right?
Yes, it's all about that, and it shows how Benjamin Franklin knew about all this, how he was obsessed with the Mayan time